So namaste everyone, मैं सबसे भारी आकाश तिवारी.
My name is Greg Street. I make video games. I've been making video games for 20-something years now. Right now, I work at Riot Games, where I plan to work forever. We're working on a new MMO set in the League of Legends universe. Before that, I worked on League of Legends, the MOBA. Before that, I worked on World of Warcraft. Before that, I worked on a series called Age of Empires. And before that, I was a scientist. It had nothing to do with video games.
Why MOBA? Like, what's so much there in this MOBA that there's so much craze and so much of things happening around here? Like one of the biggest competitions, biggest viewership, everything is MOBA.
Really good point about the Bakira. He's just too tanky for the double.
So what's so special about MOBA?
It tells a great story through the course of every game. Like, you control one character, they start out very weak, and over time it's very, noticeable the decisions you make, the decisions your team makes, the way you coordinate. You kind of start out solo, and then towards the end of the game you're grouped up. And every game, like I said, tells a little bit of a story that's different. Sometimes you get crushed, sometimes you come from behind. And when you ask players about the game, they're more than likely to tell you one of these stories.
Is there some specialty or some thought process in 5v5? Like almost everything is like 5v5. So is there some specifics whether there's a reason that it's 5v5?
I don't think there's a magical number there. There have been games that have tried, 3v3, 6v6.
Of course, yeah, but
like
the popularity.
Yeah. I mean, 5v5 works really well with the three-lane structure of MOBAs like League of Legends or DOTA, and it's enough people on your team to where one person can have a strong influence, but they can't carry the entire team if the other four people aren't filling their role. And there's also good division of labor. You can have different roles where someone can be the tank, someone can be the carry, and then have healers or support. So I think it just works out well. I think beyond that, like if it was 10v10 or something, it's just going to be too hard to keep track of all the other players.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me, an open wound scar to see. Everybody come here, gather round, welcome to the freak show, the best in town. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't get along with anybody, honestly. I've been living in my own head constantly, thoughts jumbled round, think I need a new lobotomy. Wait, all these thoughts are too negative, I don't wanna get lost in the sedative. Gotta show them what I got, I'm competitive. I'm about to go off, I won't let them win, I'll take a stab. I wanna chase a bag, I want a way I can change all the things I lack. I gotta face the facts, I got a taste in that. Got me obsessed with the rest, I got an itch to scratch. Slowly now, I'll give up everything. Daunting though, if I can see my dreams, I'll make things right, 'cause I'll do anything.
Just a basic thing, because I'm from India and you're doing this. Are you keeping a track on the Indian market, or like because let's see, Wild Rift has come, but it's still not in India. So are you guys keeping a track on the Indian market, and why has Wild Rift not come yet? Yeah.
We are keeping a track on the Indian market. I've been doing this for 20 years, and it was always, India's about to explode. India's going to be the next big gaming market. So many people there. They're very, overall fairly tech savvy, so that having, being able to navigate online gaming should totally make sense. I do think mobile is going to make a big difference. I understand a lot of people in India have mobile devices. And so we would love for Wild Rift, which is really designed to be a global game, to be able to go everywhere.
So why not India? Because there were a lot of substitutes like Arena of Valor and Mobile Legends, and those have been banned. And also PUBG, which has a huge craze in India, it's also banned. So I think so Wild Rift right now, its entry is it's gonna eat up a lot of market for everything, and it's a good opportunity for you guys. So why it's still not come in India? Is it because of some Tencent issues, or why it has not come yet?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know we talk about it. So I know it's in the plan. China was a big market for us. So we were focused a lot on getting the game out in China, which it's out now. So hopefully we can look at other parts of the world after that.
Okay. Man, I think so you guys should look into it, because I right now it's the perfect time for Wild Rift to enter India. Trust me.
That's great to know.
People are going crazy.
We talk about all the time. We know that there's a potentially large player base in India who would pick up mobile games and might be interested in a game like Wild Rift or Valorant. So it's definitely something we talk about.
How long do you think that Riot, India takes over? How long do you think?
That's a great question. It's always been, whenever we go into a new region, there's always the question of, how easy is it going to be to work with the government? And are they going to, allow our games? Are they going to, make it hard to go there? In some countries, you have to partner with a regional partner in order to get out into the country. I know that getting good internet to a lot of India was a challenge for a while, but mobile seems like it's helped a great deal with that. So.
Oh, yes. Now it's crazy. And there are a lot of esports players, especially the mobile esports player like PUBG and stuff. Although it was banned before, it has still come. Even PUBG is of Tencent, right? So how did they come back again in India? I think so. They came with some other name like Underground Mobiles or stuff, but they are back in India.
Yeah, there's a couple. It's weird that Tencent has a couple of different mobile versions of PUBG. It's Knives Out is also PUBG, but they, that's just the way Tencent operates. They don't mind having lots of different games, even, because both Wild Rift and King of Glory are Tencent games. They're kind of competitors.
Do you think it complicates things?
Just the way Tencent thinks about things is they're a giant company, and so they don't mind having lots of different, they make a lot of shots on goal, to use a soccer analogy. They take a lot of attempts. They have both QQ and WeChat, which are both instant messaging services, and again, they're kind of competing with each other, but they run both of them and it works somehow.
I was built to last when the webs are weaving. I could change the past and follow what we're achieving. Got my foot on the gas, never stop competing. If you break my glass, then this life's gonna end.
I wanna be the best in the game, invest in my name. Check no restraints, I'm obsessed with the pain. I ingest, I retain, assess and I change. Possessed by the thought I'll be free one day.
Just this MMO market, okay. Can you tell me like what is this whole process of making an MMO? Because there's a lot of things going on, and like I've been watching Riot's making, and you guys are crazy on not only just game but also very good on content. Like if just someone watches YouTube Riot Games channel, they'll get to know everything, right from a basic champion design to a splash introduction, and everything you guys have been explaining. And I was like, my God, these guys getting into so much of detail. So like, can you tell me the basic process of an MMO?
So the biggest difference for making an MMO for a company like Riot is it's a very content-rich game. We're used to making games where a lot of the content comes from other players, right? They're competitive, PvP games. And so like I said before, the story really comes from what you and the other team are doing. An MMO is very different, and the player expectation is there's a lot of content. There's enemies to fight, there's dungeons or quests, there's lots of different zones. You look at a map like Summoner's Rift or League of Legends, it has a few different kinds of trees, right? But an MMO needs hundreds of different kinds of trees because you have to cover all of these different landscapes. So we're focused a lot right now on figuring out how do we convert what Riot is good at into also creating lots and lots and lots of content, because that's really what an MMO is going to need. A lot of the rest of it are things that we think we do have a lot of experience in, like making combat really fun and compelling, having rich characters, and being able to, we've done so much background work on the world of Runeterra now that we have a lot of content to draw from.
I mean, this is a very interesting space and time to ask you this, because, Age of Empires, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, it's like you have led these games, but it's been created by someone else. But right now you are like working on an MMO right now, like Riot is working on an MMO, right? So now this time it's you with the like basics, like just raw brick and mortar, right? So like, what is this? Like, what is happening right now? Like, what are you thinking? Just not just only one specific part of the game, but like overall working for an MMO, because I'm pretty sure there's like champions and story design, then there's gameplay and systems, and then there's overall business going on. So like, what is this? Like, how are you finding it right now, building an MMO right from the scratch?
No, it's a great point, because the games I worked on before, I wasn't there at the beginning. I had joined an already successful franchise. This is the first time when, I was employee number one on the team, and then I kind of had to hire everyone else from that point. The big challenge of an MMO is it's very expensive and takes a really long time and a really big team. So that scares a lot of companies away. So what we're trying to do is, the word we use a lot is de-risk. We're trying to de-risk a lot of the scary parts of making the game. Like, how do we have enough artists to crank out all the content we're going to need? So it kind of starts small with what are the big challenges? Where do we think we need to innovate versus where are there like pretty good, already established systems that other games use? Like, we probably don't need to reinvent, I don't know, trying to think of a good example here. we don't need to reinvent the chat system, right? Like that's not why people go to play an MMO, because it has like the best chat system in the world. We could just use the chat systems, but maybe combat is somewhere where current MMOs feel a little dated, and that's something that we can innovate on. So we focus a lot on those pieces, and then once we feel like we have all of the component pieces in place, we'll put together what a lot of games call a vertical slice, where it's like you can complete the core game loop. In an MMO, that might be you go out and do some quests, you go into a dungeon and get some treasure, your character levels up, and you kind of move on to the next thing. And once we're satisfied that that is pretty compelling, then we will kind of unleash all of the, okay, now we need to make 500 swords and 200 horses and all of those things you need to make the game at launch. It's not stressful because we know we have the time and support from the company to do it right. I mean, I know video games are always under this fear of, oh, if we don't ship soon, the plug may get pulled and the game may not happen. We're pretty confident that, you know, Riot really wants to make this game. So it's just a question of doing it right. We have setbacks for sure. We'll have an idea, we're excited about it, we try it, or like, oh, this actually isn't working. When you have a large team, you inevitably have people kind of pushing in different directions. Some people really think, oh, the game really needs to be about this, while other people think, oh, the game should really be about this. And part of the job of myself and the leadership team is to kind of keep everyone rowing in the same direction. Like, yeah, that's a great idea, not for this game. Instead, you know, we're going to try to make the game in this direction. But you don't want to do that too many times, or people, you know, they lose their excitement and enthusiasm, and they're just kind of like, well, I'm not really making a game I'm excited about. I'm just, you know, doing whatever you tell me to do, and that's not very motivating either. So you got to strike the balance there.
Whatever we're talking about is like game development, right? But then there's this company, there's this business model also which you need to work around. So, you know, can you like take me through both the verticals together? Like, what is the game development like versus the company development? Maybe we are working on 4 patches here, but at the same time, it's important to keep the, you know, inflows and revenues running, revenue generation and stuff. So these are like completely 2 different things for one particular game. And usually we almost talk about esports and gaming and players and inside the thing. But like, what is this thing? What are the things going on outside? Like the place where everything is created, like what's that business going? How that works?
Yeah, so Riot is divided into our different game franchises. So we have like the League of Legends team, we have the Wild Rift team, we have the Valorant team, and they're all focused on making their game as great as can be and kind of solving the balance problems or whatever issue those games have. And then we also have Riot, the company, that sits on top of that, where we have what is the strategy for the company? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And how do we make sure that all of the games are feeding into that large scale strategy? One of the things I love about Riot is it takes a very long-term view of things. So you don't have to worry about what's our revenue for this quarter. It's more of, are we going to be able to become the company that we want to be in 10 years? And what are the steps that we need to get, you know, to go along there? We launched our first TV show this year because we wanted to prove that we could tell entertainment outside of the game medium. You know, that was pretty successful. It was a lot more successful than we even anticipated. So that gives us the confidence to go bigger next time.
What do you think about the Arcane? Like, how did you find it?
I mean, I worked on Arcane a lot personally, so I was very close to it. I really liked the story, and you know, I hoped that players would like it as well. I worried maybe it would be too dark for some people, maybe it would be too detailed, too much information. And if you weren't familiar with the universe, you wouldn't understand it. Because it was animated, I was worried that people would like want to, you know, share it with their children or younger people, and it's not necessarily appropriate for little kids. So I was cautiously optimistic. I knew the story was good. I had a lot of faith in it. I was just kind of, you never know what, you know, exactly what people are going to think once it goes live.
You know, people are already connected to characters. They have this one emotional feeling, attachment to a character. And plus there are already stories in League of Legends, like every champion has its story. Now, when there's something like another extension to the IP, right? So the story is different there. Okay. Or I mean, kind of related, but there would be some stories. There would be some champions whose story would be dark, would be positive. Maybe someone needs to die sometime, or maybe there can be, there would be different arcs, right? Are you like, don't you think that it can have a positive impact, but it can also have a negative impact? Like maybe, you know, the person stops relating to that champion or doesn't play that just because the champion dies in the movie. Like, do you think that there's a relationship or change in the relationship which can happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People spend a lot of time with these characters. If they're big league players, you know, they spend a lot of time playing a character. And so our strategy is always to kind of honor that character and treat them with respect, because they're somebody's main, there's some character that somebody loves. So we would we try to never have a character that's just there for comic relief or is just there almost like a cameo. We know that if we're going to invest in a character, they need to live up to player expectations of what the character be like. They may not be exactly the way people thought. Maybe they talk differently, or with Jinx, we debated a lot how much to make her kind of fun-loving and crazy versus like, actually a homicidal killer. Because if you go too far in one direction, you may alienate part of the fan base. And of course, we can't, even in a show like Arcane with so many characters, we can't cover every character, even every character that lives in that city. So someone's going to be disappointed that, they were a Twitch main or they were a Camille main and those characters don't show up, at least so far.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. And just introducing Catelyn, Jace, Vi, Jinx, and Hermit Anger together, I was like, okay, how are we gonna like build so many character story together at once? Like in the beginning 4 or 5 episodes, and there are 140 champions. So, as we are talking about IP, like, can you tell me like how are these IPs extended, and how do you guys work on, like, what is the first basic focus key? Okay, let's extend this IP to this, or let's extend IP into this. What is the whole process of making an IP around the game?
Yeah, it's been a real weird adventure for Riot, because early on, honestly, we didn't take the IP that seriously. We were really focused on the game. Some of the characters were a little generic. Some of them felt very similar to, characters from other IPs. And over time, as players spent a lot of time in the game, they wanted to know more. They're like, hey, tell us about this character. If Lux and Garrett are brother and sister, what does that mean? And so we started to tell a little bit more of the backstories, and players were really into it and they wanted to know more. And so over time, we ended up having to actually retcon some of our older storytelling to make a more compelling world. Like a great example of this is early on, we said, well, magic can only take place on the field of justice where the big battles take place. But that really limits your storytelling ability if magic can't occur anywhere else in the world. And we finally decided, that was kind of a dumb, arbitrary rule. It was trying to explain the game world of the game, but it's fine just to have an awesome fantasy world where magic is everywhere, because that just gives you more storytelling potential.
Yeah, man. As I told you, when I was going through your game developer conference, and when you said, there are 3 things viewers want from game. That's competition, which needs to be exciting. There's drama. There's need to be rise and lows and pacing. And then there should be clarity where, the viewer gets to know what's happening. What are the stakes, what's going to happen next, right? So when you're designing this game, okay, and when you need to keep these things in mind, the competition, the drama, the clarity, and also it's a real-time thing, right? So how do you design things, or how do you integrate everything and at the same time keep it real and authentic? At the same time, let's, like every result is different.
We've always made our games kind of for the core audience. Like we could have made a decision long ago, like, hey, let's simplify League of Legends a lot, because that'll give it broader appeal. But that sacrifices too much of kind of the long-term depth of the game, and people would end up getting bored either as viewers or participants. So we always avoided that and just went for the richest experience we could have. But to solve the clarity problems, you can enjoy a game like League at different levels. Like early on, you can kind of ignore the item system altogether, particularly in something like Wild Rift, which just offers you suggestions. You're like, yeah, I'll just get that. And then as a more advanced player, you can pay a little more attention to, well, given this situation and this comp and this enemy team, what's the right item to have here? And that you can extend that through a lot of different things, from like the mastery system to unusual play styles, unusual team comps, that kind of thing, and being able to enjoy it at different levels. And then once you feel like you need a little bit more depth, you can kind of dive into the next level and say, oh, there's so much more going on here that I didn't realize before.
Yeah, but that's at a player level, and that's at a individual level, right? But when you are as a third person designing something for someone or for a particular gang, right? And when you're keeping, by the way, I loved that talk. I'm super, like, that talk was amazing. I don't know why.
Oh, cool.
I was like, okay, there's that much thought process going on for a game where, when you need to see, okay, is there drama going on? Is there things going on for excitement? Okay, you need to, as you said, keep pros. Every time pros, they take less risk in the beginning, but you want audience to give that excitement. So you want pros to take risk at the beginning. So you need to design those things and make them move at a particular direction. At the same time, you want to keep it real. Okay, the person is making that move. Okay, you want that person to make that move, but the person is actually making that decision. So how do you iterate in that way that it actually happens, and it happens in real time.
Yeah. I mean, just to take a simple example, if you have a game and the characters have a really, really high health pools, then the outcome of fights are often not going to be, they're not going to affect the outcome of the game much, because everyone's going to come in, they're going to take a little bit of damage, and they'll probably retreat, and they'll do that over and over again. And so the game probably has very low drama as a result, because there's never a definitive outcome to these battles. They're people just kind of bumping into each other. So if you lower health a little bit and make the fight a little more lethal, then what happens is, as soon as someone makes a mistake or someone has a really good play, now the outcome of that particular battle will be affected, and maybe one team loses 2 members. And now the outcome of that battle can have an effect on the overall strategy of the game. That could be a big turning point where the team that was ahead made a risky move, they got punished for it, and now things have totally changed in direction, and the team that was losing before is now on top. I mean, I make it sound simple. It's obviously not that simple, but that's kind of what's going through our head when we're looking at it.
But actually, I'm interested in knowing, like, okay, you decided this. Okay, so when you are deciding this in the team, and when you guys are making these strategies to implement, like, what's the process behind? Like, whatever you told me, like, is it like, okay, fact number 1, this is gonna happen. If you just keep the health pool less, the fight is gonna be more lethal. I was like, how do these things come? Like, is there a conference room where people just say, okay, how can we make it more exciting? Or like, today's task is just to see what are the things which are going too monotonous, more boring, and how we can switch. And then someone says, okay, why not we do this? Then you guys, okay, brainstorm. You just have this one like barrier. Okay, if you do this, if this will happen. Or it's like, no, someone will give an idea. So then you guys will implement as a patch trial. You guys will play. And then like, so what is this? How do you decide one idea?
The way we like to divide up work is the leads on the team, or the directors, or the lead game designers, will think about the high level strategy. Like, what are the goals that we're trying to accomplish, but not the specifics. So the game director on League of Legends might say, hey, I'm noticing that we're having a lot lower, kills in the game right now. It seems like characters aren't dying, they can recover too quickly. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know the right solution, but I think that's a problem we should tackle. And then they'll hand that off to a particular team, like the champion team or the team that does live balance, and say, hey, you guys are closer to the problem. You'll know the exact knobs to turn to bring out this outcome, but the outcome that I want is to have more deaths in the game. And then the team that's closer to it can decide, well, the right way to do that's to increase damage. The right way to do that's to lower cooldown so people can use their abilities more often. Or the right way to do it is to put in some like really flashy high damage items in the game that you can aspire to reach, because they can think about what are the exact outcomes there. I think the mistake some game developers make is, say, the lead designer or the executive producer who's ever in charge of the game will try to make all of the decisions, but that person doesn't have all of the context. Someone who is really close to the combat systems of the game is better able to extrapolate what are going to be the ramifications here. If we change armor by 5, is that a huge swing, or is that a tiny little swing that won't have any effect? And so it works out best when at high level you kind of set the big goals, like, hey, we're trying to sail across the ocean. And then the people who are actually in the trenches can decide, okay, well, we're going to need this much fuel, we're going to need navigation maps, this, to actually make that trip reality.
I'm going rogue!
There's a surprise.
Oha Katararya!
Korkma, yakışıklılara bir şey olmaz.
Game face on when I chase like that. Yeah, I play so strong with a knife in the back. I'ma swing home run like a baseball bat. Gonna see me rise if you hate on that. I don't play both sides, doing me no cap. I'ma ride or die for my dreams on tap. I'ma fly real high, you ain't see me slack. No, it's not how you fall, it's how you get right back up. That's how you get tough. Calluses on my hands so rough, yeah, I call your bluff. I'm not the one, mess with me and come out with none. Cause I'm so done, you had your fun. And now you're gonna face down the barrel of the gun. Cause I got a full clip with your name on it. But I'ma let you slide cause you ain't worth it. Time staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. Time staying strong, need to move on to be what I want. I'll keep dreaming on. I wanna be someone. I wanna be great. I'm gonna be someone. It's never too late.
So, There are so many champions, so many characters. There are dragons, there are humans, there's magic, there's mage, and everyone is in one world. Okay. Now, when it comes to Riot or any game development team, okay, how is that team? Is that team same like the game, like, different crazy characters coming in and developing something, one can be a completely extrovert, one would be completely introvert. Like, how's the team compared to the characters of the game? Like, what are the resemblances? What are the differences? What are the qualifications, you being a scientist, being a game? I just want to go beyond that. Like, what's the team behind?
Yeah, for starters, we try to have a really diverse team because League of Legends and hopefully all of our games are global games. They're played around the world. So we want to make sure we have the perspective of what are players in Korea saying right now, or what are players in the Middle East excited about, and make sure that we're getting that representation, that we're not just making games. We're based in California. It would be easy for us just to make a game that was popular in California, didn't resonate with the rest of the world. So that's a starter. We also know that people come to the game to any game, but including our games, for different reasons. Some people they like the camaraderie of hanging out with their friends and doing something fun. Others are there just for the victory. They kind of don't care if they do it with their friends, they do it alone. They just like to win, and they like to get better and better at the game. So we try to make sure that we offer something to players of those different kinds of motivations. And again, that helps to just have a diverse team where early on at Riot, we only hired people who had played a lot of League of Legends. And you can imagine that really limits the potential pool of applicants. Nowadays, we hire people for, lots of different backgrounds. We'll hire people who love the IP, but don't play a lot of video games. They just probably won't be working on champion design. They may be working, they may be helping to tell the next Arcane-like story or something.
Oh, okay. So there are scope for people who don't play League of Legends but are connected to the movie or just the IP and can still enter Riot. Oh, damn, that's nice.
Yeah. Or we up until now have mostly made multiplayer games, but we'd like to get into the world of single player games. So we know that'll attract different kinds of players and different kinds of developers as well.
So when you said about this global game again, where there was one of your talks where you were giving the stats that all the US and Europe game development agencies, they make the games which are actually popular more in Asia, and the games which are developed in Asia are actually more popular in US, like Clash Royale or those kind of games. So why the mix is good? Obviously the mix is good, but any specific reason why this attracts this and this attracts this? Because the first thing should be like, if you guys are making a game, US should have been the more popular place where something like a DOTA or something like a League of Legends should be more popular, but the Asian craze is like crazy there. So
yeah.
Like, do you think about this?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's kind of two levels to answer that question. On the one hand, we think gamers are gamers around the world. They kind of like the same things. It's dangerous, I think, to say, oh, players in India, they only like this particular type of game or this particular art style, because, people even within a given country are very diverse and have different things they like or they don't like. So I think that's true on the one level. On the other hand, you have to be aware of the realities in certain regions. In Korea, for a long time, even today to some extent, they mostly play PC games in PC cafes. So you need a business model that supports that. A lot of people don't have a computer at home. And watching mobile take off in places like Asia has been huge for us. It's getting there in the rest of the world, but Asia really pioneered mobile gaming as a serious pursuit, not just, a kind of casual party game, but something that you can actually devote hundreds of hours to.
Yeah, man. So, there's this endless battle between PC versus mobile. So which is still going on. Like, there was first PC versus console, now PC versus mobile. Now it's going to be PC versus VR soon. Yeah. So like there's this constant battle and still no man has won yet. Okay. What do you think? Like, who's going to win, or like is like all PC, console, mobile is going to be taken over and VR will win, or like all will coexist? What do you think on a personal level? What's your opinion?
We make games for a large audience, right? Our games are relatively expensive to make. We want to make sure we have, millions of players where we can. And so you have to be careful not to eliminate too much of the world population because of expensive technology. If we were a VR game, we would not have millions of players because there aren't millions of players in the world that can afford the VR technology right now. consoles are very expensive. It's all, it's still hard to find a PlayStation 5 or a new Xbox. And we know that pretty much that's US, Europe, and Japan, who are really big into console. For a long time, Riot, frankly, we dismissed mobile as a gaming platform. And, that was a big mistake when you look at what King of Glory was able to do. That by all rights probably should have been League of Legends. And it could have been if we had just taken mobile a little more seriously early on. So overall, our strategy is we go where players are. And if a new platform evolves and there's a lot of players who are excited about the game, then we'll look at developing for it. If VR gets to the point where someone solves the hardware problems and it's very widespread and lots of players are doing it, then absolutely we'll jump into that space. Yeah.
What do you think on a personal opinion, like you playing games for more than 20 years? What do you think?
Yeah. I think there will always be kind of the high end and the lower end solution. Like the really nice thing about mobile is everyone has a phone and the phone is always with you. So if you're waiting for the bus, if you're sitting at a cafe, if you're in line somewhere, you could pull out your phone and play a game. If all of your friends are sitting around after school, you could pull out a phone and play a game. You can't do that with a PC, obviously. But, mobile has a small screen. It doesn't have, giant speakers. It doesn't have a mouse or keyboard or a great controller. So I can imagine a world where there's always the convenient factor of carrying the phone around, and then I get home and I have my, my big TV in my living room or my computer at my desk, or maybe at university or at work, I have a higher end system and I can play games there.
Okay. So basically you say that things will coexist.
I think things will coexist, at least for, I don't know if the high end solution will be a console, it'll be a PC, or be something that can do both. And then I just don't see mobile going away. It's so convenient. If those screens get too big, you can't keep them in your pocket anymore. So I think that's always going to be around.
There's this relationship cost, which I told you. There's this lot of time involved, like people putting a lot of efforts in the game and stuff. You don't want people to leave the game, but you also want people to try this. Okay, you tried League of Legends, let's also try Valorant. Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you balance that? Like the cost of relationship is at that level that it's balanced. It's not very high and it's also not very low for me, so that it's not very easy for me to switch and leave this.
Yeah. The way we think about it is we want to make sure that with any of these games, it's okay to take a break, right? If a new game comes out, or if your life changes, you get a new job, you go to university, whatever, that you can take a break and then come back to the game. League of Legends evolves, but it doesn't evolve so much that it's unrecognizable. You're still going to start the game by zoning in, buying items, running down the lane with your characters. Hey, bud. And
2 new guests on a show. Welcome, guys. Welcome to India.
The advantages of working at home. You get to work in your office with your dogs.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I was saying we like to make it so that the games are kind of easy to come back to. Our games are free to play, so that you don't have to, buy a new account or a new subscription to jump back in. Yes, things will change and your characters may have better art or their stats may change. And we want to deliver the same thing with the MMO. I think MMOs are kind of famous for not respecting players' time very well. They can often ask you to you're only going to be able to play this game if you are willing to spend hundreds of hours. And that's just not reasonable for a lot of players. We would be excluding a big part of the audience if we said the only way to have fun in our game is if you can play like 4 hours a day. That's just not realistic.
How does the revenue generation process take place here? Because the game is free and the studio is huge. It takes a lot of cost to develop and maintain these games, servers, and the whole organization. So how does the revenue generation takes place, if you can share?
Yeah. Again, Riot takes a really long-term view of things. So we're okay launching a game if the game is not super profitable from day one, as long as it seems like players are interested and players say they're going to, stick around. Then we know that over time, if they're spending a lot of time in the game, they're happy to spend money on it. They say, this is a hobby. This is something I love. I don't mind spending a little bit of money on it here and there. But we always try to make it to where they do it because they want to, not because they feel like they have to. And if times are tight or they're just not playing the game as much, well, that's a time that maybe you won't invest much of your actual money into the game. And we're okay with that because we think the game's going to be around for a long time. Eventually, if you love it, you can come back to it. I think that works out better. For us anyway. There are definitely business models out there where they know players aren't going to play their games for very long, so they're asking them, hey, why don't you spend a lot of money right now while you're excited? A lot of mobile games do that, and then players stop playing and kind of move on. So we take the opposite approach of trying to develop a long-term relationship with the players.
Okay. Uh, Man, obviously there's content, one part of IP. There's this game. What are the other things you guys look in when you're building an IP? Suppose just take an example of League of Legends. What are the other ways you can extend this IP? And like, how do you come across that part key? The IP should have core values of League of Legends, or like it should generate some revenue because the game is free. Like, what are the core principles on which the IP is extended, and where till like what's the extent? Like, where can it go except for the content?
There's a lot of things you have to look at. You have to look at, is the IP recognizable? Does it feel like our IP? If you see a screenshot of League of Legends, you see a League of Legends character, are you likely to say, oh yeah, I recognize that? Or versus saying, oh, that could be Marvel, or that could be Star Wars, or that could be a different IP. So being able to recognize it, I think, is important. And the recognition can go from everything from like the characters' costumes to the art style and the colors and the is it kind of dark and dreary, or is it bright and cheerful? All of that gets into it. As far as where the IP can go at Riot, like, games are our core business. We are never going to become, a TV company that makes games on the side. We're always going to be a game company, and we view these other extensions of the IP, such a businessy word, but like telling stories in different mediums, like writing books or comic books or TV shows. That's always to kind of build on the IP and bring in more people to the ecosystem who then might become customers for the game someday. I was on the merchandise team for a little while, where we make t-shirts and action figures and things like that. And that's a hard business to really turn a profit in. It's mostly there as an extension of the brand rather than something that generates, millions of dollars of revenue.
Oh, damn. Okay. So
Yeah.
I have this perception ki, like, most probably majority of the extension of IP would generate some revenue.
Yeah, I think if you look at, like, I'm not exactly sure about this, but I think Disney makes a lot more money on their theme parks than they do on all of their like t-shirts and toys. Now, that's a big company and they definitely make a lot of money on t-shirts and toys, but it's a hard business to be in. You have physical goods, you have to have a warehouse to store things, you have to manufacture things. Often you're manufacturing things in China or Bangladesh or Taiwan, and then it has to get on a boat and get shipped around. So it's very different world than the digital world, where you make something and then you push a button and it goes everywhere.
So Dota came in, League of Legends came in, then Dota 2 came in, right? Now, League of Legends, I won't say it's completely a Dota clone, but like you yourself, when you came across League of Legends, you were like, okay, oh, that Dota clone. So, right. But then obviously League of Legends has its own brand name now, completely different. But still, like, Dota 2 has come in, and although League of Legends esports is also one of the biggest esports in competition, but the Dota 2 prize pool and competition has more prize pool in it, we can say like that. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep the level and intensity and interaction and attraction among the players, gamers, and viewers in general on par of that? And also, what do you think about that? Like, do you guys see Dota as your competitors, or do you guys see, no, they're not our competitors, it's a good game, but it's not the same? Like, what do you think about Dota as a person, and what do you think about Dota as a Rioteer?
Yeah, it's funny. We don't really think of Valve or Dota as competitors. People are surprised that we have people at Riot who love playing League of Legends. They also love playing Dota. They're different games. And yeah, we did not create the MOBA genre by any stretch. We took a game genre that seemed like it had promise, and we tried to say, hey, we think there's some opportunities here to innovate. We did the same thing with Valorant. Valorant is not a brand new genre that didn't exist before. There's a lot of elements of games. But
it has people have lots of praises for Valorant. Like, people even who are like just CS and CS:GO loyal fans, they also are playing Valorant, and that it's very attractive. And I loved how, in like, even though you are coming in the same genre, people are actually going and playing and loving it. Like, yeah, continue.
Yeah, it's a great example, because we looked at, for the tactical shooter crowd, what are the, we call them pain points. Where are players experiencing pain? One element was the cheating and the aim bots and the hacks. If we can prevent that, we can have higher level of competitive integrity, which will have players feel like they can invest more in the game. So that was a huge initiative on the project to try to make sure we could do that. We also wanted to make sure that we wanted to add powers to the agents, but we didn't want that to dominate the gameplay. We ultimately wanted to be a game about good shooting skills, with the powers just kind of, to me, they almost feel like the grenades of a game like CS, where that's not how you're going to win, but it definitely, if you're good at it, definitely can help you win. And we will start small and we'll build. We're going to invest a lot in Valorant. The Valorant esports are a ton of fun to watch, so it can just grow from there. And rather than having a few players who are willing to spend a lot of money individually, we'll go for the larger audience where everyone can spend a little bit of money, but we don't go for the traditional. A lot of game companies call them whales. They try to find a few players who are going to spend a lot of money on the game. It's almost hard to spend a lot of money on our games because there's just not that much you can, you can't buy power. You can buy a lot of skins, but you can only play one character at a time anyway.
So do you think in the long run, it's going to be Dota versus League of Legends, or it's going to be Dota and League of Legends? And if are they going to coexist on the same level, or it's going to be like a superior? And...
I think they'll continue to coexist for a long time. They kind of, serve different audiences now. Valve's strategy, I've never worked there, but it always seems to me on the outside that they kind of want to remain fairly small and push a lot of the development to players themselves. They'll have a lot of user-generated content. Like you said, the Dota prize pool comes from players, and that's how they, that's their business strategy. Where ours is, let's go really big. Let's have a lot of Riot support for the game, and let's try to have individual offices around the world to support local communities and that sort of thing.
I was shocked when I saw this fact. League of Legends esports has more viewership than NBA. And, so I'm like, esports has gone big now. Like before people were having problems just to keep it sustainable, right? They had to leave gaming, but now it's like, it can be a career, and not only a career, but it can be a career where the viewership is crossing NBA, right? Yeah. Where do you think things got triggered? Like, how do you think NBA got left down? I'm not saying it's a bad sport. I'm just saying, How do you think esports went so ahead that it has left NBA behind? And soon, like the most viewed sport is soccer, but like, I think so esports gonna someday be that as well. Like, so where do you think that point where things got triggered, like boom?
I think it's a couple of things. One is the global relevance of esports. NBA is, still largely a North American sport. I know people in different parts of the world like to play it, but it's dominated by North America. Soccer is gigantic around the world, but relatively small in the US compared to other sports, which is always kind of crazy to me. So, but a game like League of Legends is popular in China, it's popular in Brazil, it's popular in Europe. So you have millions of players around the world playing the same game. I think another aspect of it is what we call the path to pro, where certainly not many people are going to be able to aspire to be professional esports players, but you kind of can understand how that would work. You play a lot of League of Legends, you see yourself climbing up the ladder, and you think, hey, I'm watching those pros play and I could do some of the moves they do. Whereas unless I'm 7 feet tall, I know I'm probably never going to play, for the NBA and a lot of professional sports. I mean, there's definitely physical requirements for esports, and we believe that those players are athletes, but it's different. And I think you can look at the winners of Valorant or the winners of League of Legends and say, oh, I can see myself in them much more easily than I can when I, look at a professional, football team or something.
What's the interaction between the game development and the esports player? Like, obviously there's a huge interaction between just the gamers, and there's forums, there's Reddit, and people love to interact, and you are like one of the celebrities in the online community space, Ghostcrawler. So it's kind of good, and it's kind of more friendly to react online with just gamers. So what's the interaction with the esports player? Like, is it too serious? Is just they just enter, that's round one, 2 teams enter, boom, one, and then they're just back to their team bases discussing things. In India we say calm se calm, like, just work to work basis. Okay, this is not good, this is not good, that's it. That's the relationship, rather than compared to the online community where there's more friendship involved, there's jokes, there's hanging around and stuff.
I think it's more of the latter. It's more of joking around. The players in particular spend a lot of time with the casters and the crew who staff the events. They get to know them. It's fun. There are definitely serious moments. There's definitely dramatic moments. But when we go to like an esports event, the players are the celebrities there, right? And that's the way it should be. I'm not on League of Legends anymore, but when I was, we would try to meet with the players, say once a year or so, and just kind of talk about the game. What are the pain points for them? Help them to understand why we're making certain decisions and so on, because they're influential. They have a very valuable perspective. They, are much more skilled at the game than someone like me. So it's great to understand where they're coming from, what they like and what they don't like, how much change is good because it keeps things fresh without them feeling like all of the skills that they worked on now get thrown out the window and they have to relearn the game.
You joining Age of Empires, you joining World of Warcraft, you joining League of Legends and heading all three. Now the game has been developed by someone else, right? But you coming in and you leading that team later on, how do you keep the taste same? Like what is your process when you come in a team and when you learn about that specific game? Okay, so obviously there's a specific role you have been given, right? You have to make changes, you have to scale it, you have to make it more interesting. There would be a lot of things going on, right? But like even you need to learn that taste first. How do you keep the taste same? How do you function as Greg Street on Age of Empires or as Greg Street on League of Legends or World of Warcraft?
Yeah, I compare it a lot to how this sounds a lot more arrogant than I mean for it to sound, but the way political leaders come to power, or the way court justices kind of look back over the history of a country or laws, and interpreting the precedents that are there. So you don't want to completely upend the game when a new leader comes in. You want to keep what's working. So you have to kind of go back and look like, what is it that's special about this game? What are the values that the developers held that we want to keep as sacred? And then what are the areas where it's okay to deviate a little from? Long ago, we realized that clarity was really important to League of Legends. We wanted to make sure we didn't sacrifice clarity too much, but we also know that having a very competitive game is important, and it would be okay to sacrifice clarity in some cases to make sure that players could do really flashy plays or something that felt really satisfactory. So it feels a little bit like archaeology, I think, when you take a game like Age of Empires and you go back and say, what is it about this game that's special, and how do we preserve that? How do we, we don't want to change it so much that people say I don't recognize it anymore.
Okay. Age of Empires, it was a lovely game. I don't know why it got like, people used to still play it like 3-4 years back, but every game has this like particular lifespan, right? Now I think so people have quite moved on from Age of Empires. I still don't know. So where do you think like the time span of a game lies? Like because even League of Legends, it's been quite a long time now. Maybe that's the reason you guys are working on a new MMO. So what's that game span? When do you know that okay, now it's enough. Now it's enough of the game.
I think sometimes games kind of collapse under their own weight. You need to add more content over time to keep the game interesting and fresh. Now that's not true of chess. That's not true of poker. Some of those games stay the same because they already have enough depth overall. But I think for a lot of video games, we keep adding more and more. And the more you add, kind of the harder it is for someone to keep track, the harder it is to come back after a break, the harder it is for a new player to step in. And sometimes I think they just move on. Like one theory we have about why you don't see a lot of RTS games today is that the MOBA genre delivers a lot of the experience in the RTS in a better way, in a way that is more accessible to more people, because you basically could focus on one character rather than having to like scroll all over the map and pay attention to a lot of different areas at once, which is one of the the toughest and most challenging skills in an RTS game. Which is not to say that everyone there's still fans of RTS games, and I know Microsoft just came out with Age of Empires 4, so they think there must be a big enough audience there. But I think overall, sometimes genres just evolve into different directions.
So actually, I was coming to the next thing. Like, as you said, like there's much less and less RTS, right? And since mobile gaming has coming, MOBA is strong. But what do you think? Like when it comes to MMO, do you think that soon role-playing games would also be much less popular and it would be something like a PUBG where it's just battle?
I think it depends. For our game, we want the role-playing to still be a big component. We know that's part of what attracts players to the genre, but there's something to be said for games that are kind of easy to pick up, like a Fortnite or a PUBG, where you don't really have to understand the universe of the characters. It's just kind of jump in and play and have a good time. And I think there's plenty of room for that as well.
Okay, what's the strategy for you guys when you introduce a new game? How do you make people adapt to it, and then soon after adapting you scale it to from 100 to 1,000 players? Like how do you do that? Like what's your strategy as a game publishing studio?
It's a lot of playtesting, honestly. We start playtesting very early, internally with like our own development team, and then we'll ask other people at Riot to play the game.
Damage coming out of the Xayah ult though was, I think it was a mix of both the visuals soft and the damage was a little soft.
Yeah, definitely.
So I
really
didn't
notice the
find myself
damage.
playing around the
damage
cone very much.
Yeah.
And then we'll ask, fans, players to jump in, and we'll start small. We'll react to their feedback. Maybe they'll say, oh, the game was too long, or it was too hard to close out the game, or I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do when I got into this situation.
A little bit more range on this
kind of squishy, but they do decent damage.
Had a difficult time distinguishing between the two.
That's actually a really good point.
And then we'll make changes and we'll kind of try again. And as people are having more and more fun and their concerns drop, we bring it into a bigger and bigger audience until we finally have the confidence of like, okay, we're ready to go live. Now, that said, one of the nice things about Riot is we're always going to keep patching the game. We believe the game is a living thing that needs to be updated and evolved. So even if we don't get it 100% right when we launch, and we won't, there's plenty of chances to kind of fix the rough edges over time.
So there are a lot of components which come in and take place and make the overall thing much better, even if it's one particular genre, right? So you as a gamer, and in game, there's a lot of things. There's story, there's things taken from history, civilization, then there's things taken from science, a lot of things. Then there's things taken from chakra, power, and all the ancient things, right? There's mythology, there's legacy. There are a lot of things when it comes into gaming, right? But the people who are creating it, they are the ones who actually bring in the mythology. They are the ones who actually bring in the science and fuse it with the mythology thing, right?
Yeah.
So what are the things which is there in your subconscious which you bring in the table? Like, is it history? Is it science? Is it designing? What are the things? Are you getting me what I'm saying?
Oh, I totally get what you're saying. Like, it is really hard to stare at a blank page and say, for example, we need to make a new monster for the game. And you're just like staring at a blank page, like, where do I even begin? You need inspiration from somewhere, and inspiration can come from a lot of different places. In the video game industry, you can see a lot of inspiration from comic books, from anime, from movies. For me personally, I think what I bring to the table is history. I've always loved history, and I read a lot of history, and I use that for Age of Empires. And then my background with nature, where like, hey, there's this crazy kind of animal you've probably never heard of. We can use that to make something that feels real, but is something people haven't seen before. I think those are the two. I read comic books, but I'm not the biggest, comic book nerd in the world. But I do know a lot about history and the natural world.
Man, I just realized it. Yeah, when you have a science background and at the same time it's history, it's actually quite amazing and it's a plus point for you to have this background, and you can incorporate so many things.
One that comes to mind is when we were doing Vashir in World of Warcraft. It was an underwater zone, and a lot of what we had been working on up until that point was coral reefs and kelp forests, because that's what the artists knew. That's very common. And I introduced them to some other types. There's a lot of different diverse environments underwater, and some different kinds of creatures they could use, and some like color schemes and things like that they incorporated just to make sure that zone had enough diversity overall.
You have this career of more than 20-25 years, and you have this background of 3 different games, 3 different companies, and at the same time, I think so more than 20 different roles in your entire corporate career, right? So tell me, like, as a person, as an individual, what is the most embarrassing thing, or what's the most shittiest thing you have ever done in your entire life?
Wow, most embarrassing. There's so many. Gosh. Oh, I'm just trying to think of a good example. I've never had that question before. I always feel bad when we make a change to the game and it doesn't resonate with players, or they feel betrayed, or they feel like we don't understand. That always stings, and I feel like we screwed up, when that happens. They're not going to like every change we make, but at least we can provide a framework so they understand. It's great when someone says, well, I disagree with the change, but I understand what Riot or Blizzard or whoever we're trying to do with the change. So I think that's a good thing.
Maybe that you can consider that disappointment, but like one of the most embarrassing things, like too much latency.
There was one time in I went to a conference in Taipei for the Mist of Pandaria expansion, and they had hired all of these women to dress up like pandas because it was an Asian themed expansion, and they wanted me to get up on stage and dance with the women. And I'm like, no, that like video would be shown forever. That would be so ridiculous. So I took a picture with them, but I wasn't gonna like get up and dance.
So where can I find the video now?
It's probably online. I think one of the talks we talked about, I showed a slide of it.
So you're telling me there's actually Ghostcrawler moves with pandas?
Yeah, I didn't dance much with them, but I took a picture with them. It was pretty ridiculous.
Oh damn. One thing that has been your most proudest thing ever, like in your achievement case?
Hey, most of my answer there is about the teams I've built or hiring people. Sometimes taking a chance on someone where people weren't sure, hey, is this person right for the role, and then watching them kind of grow and take on more and more responsibility. That feels really good, because I'm not often in a situation where I put a feature into a game that's all me. It's usually a group effort, and a lot of people work to make that awesome. I always enjoy getting up in front of a crowd, getting up on stage at China Joy or BlizzCon or E3 or something like that, and talking to people. That's always fun to me. I always really enjoy talking to young people and students. One of the things I always try to do when I travel is visit a university and talk to a game development group or a tech classroom, answer questions about the industry and how I see how they can get into the game industry if that's something they're interested in. That's always very fulfilling.
Trying always to meet the novices. So yeah.
Something I try to always impress upon young people is don't focus so much on your first big job, because if you're an artist, it's unlikely that your first job is going to be you making art for a living, or if you want to be in a game development, that you're going to be the lead game designer on a game. It's okay to change jobs a lot. It's okay to change careers a lot. And a lot of the careers that will exist for young people today, don't exist today. They don't even know what's out there because the careers, the technology doesn't exist yet. So, jump around a lot, experiment. You can always have a passion for your art or your dance or your music that could be a hobby, and maybe someday you can incorporate that hobby into your career once you have been a little more successful. But don't feel that right out of school or right out of university you have to immediately get into that role to be successful.
Yeah, man. Especially you, I just wanted to know, what was that? Is it a gut feeling which tells you to switch jobs? Because it's quite difficult in India to just switch from being a scientist, a science student, a PhD student to a gamer. Yeah. Trust me, did your parents agree? That's a big deal here. So the time span with you at every game, like Age of Empires 10 years, World of Warcraft and Riot Games, there's too much time, efforts and energy involved in every area, whichever you have worked or whichever you have been part of, and still you have switched. What was that thing? Is it a gut feeling which tells you to change? Is it a strategy which you make? Okay, now it's time, my time is over. How do you switch?
For me, it's happened a couple different ways. For science, what really struck me was, science, at least in the United States, and it probably is true in India as well, is it's not a industry you go into to make a lot of money. It's not as well supported as it should be by the government, by other industries. Really, to go into science in the United States, you go into it because you love it, because that's the only thing you can imagine doing. And I felt a little bit like a fraud, because I realized that all of my colleagues really, really loved what they were doing, much more than I did. And I felt like I was stealing the space from someone who really, really wanted my job. And I was just kind of sitting in that seat and not letting them take it. What I really loved is video games. That's what I wanted to spend my time doing. And I wanted to go somewhere where I didn't feel like a fraud, where I felt authentic. And so that's why I eventually made the switch. It was stressful. I agonized about it for a long time. I tried to make sure I could recover from it if the video game thing didn't work out. And then when I jumped both from Age of Empires and then again from World of Warcraft, I realized I'd gotten a little bit of bored. I was making the same game over and over again, and I started to make changes to the game, not because they were the right thing for the game or players, but because they were entertaining to me. They were interesting to me to keep me engaged. And that's the wrong reason to make changes, because you're affecting so many people. And I decided that I needed to find a new challenge, something new to engage with, so that I would, make the right decisions for the game, and not just because they were fun for me to make.
You have given dozens and dozens of talks, interviews, podcasts. You have met a lot of people, right? What was that one thing you wanted me to ask you? Like, what was the one thing you wanted to actually speak on? Like, maybe someone has never asked me yet and I want to speak on, or maybe something you expected me coming from India asking you. What was that things? Because you've given a lot of talks. There have been a lot of Q&As, like millions of people have asked you questions on forums. Like, one thing you wanted to talk about, or one thing you feel people should ask you.
One thing I feel people should ask me. How about what types of entertainment outside of gaming I enjoy? Because I think there's an assumption that people who play video games, maybe they also read comic books, they also watch anime, or they read science fiction. I don't read a lot of science fiction. I find a lot of science fiction to be pretty bad writing, because I care a lot about character and story development. And I think a lot of science fiction comes from a place of, hey, I have a cool idea and I'm just going to kind of write about that, and using the characters as the vehicle for this plot. So I read a lot of historical work. I read a lot of current day novels, and less science fiction and fantasy, because there's really good stuff out there, but a lot of it is kind of cheesy too.
So what are your other sources of entertainment, like novels? And
I really like novels. I really like reading about history. I do listen to a lot of podcasts and Audible books and things like that. I don't watch a lot of TV or movies. It's hard to do everything, and so I focus mostly on books and games. I think I love role-playing games. I talk a lot about Dungeons and Dragons and how that challenges my imagination and gives me a lot of ideas and inspiration.
And panda dances.
Yeah.
Man, like, how's like, are you also influencing a lot of things on your family? Like, is everyone gamer there, or like?
My daughter's a big gamer. My wife could care less. Like, she doesn't really understand it. I have to kind of explain to her sometimes what I'm talking about.
Your daughter competes with you?
Yeah. She loves games like World of Warcraft. She doesn't love competitive games as much, but I think she's got many more hours in WoW than I do at this point.
Damn. Okay. Yes, man. That's it. Thank you so much for doing this, man. It's amazing, Greg.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah. Really, like I said, I love talking to people from different parts of the world and learning things and trying to share. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
And keep being Ghostcrawler, dude. You're the coolest. You're the coolest, dude. I was like, okay, this guy is so cool. This guy is so direct. He has no problem swearing and saying things. He has no problem talking openly about how you should share data with players. Like, I'm like, okay, don't you get any pressure from the organization? Like, okay, you can't talk like this, dude. Like, you're a VP now. Like, don't you get that much pressure?
Sometimes if they're like, hey, that, you may have overshared a little bit here, but the company, Riot in particular, tries to be very authentic and very open. So, that's part of why I get along so well with the company, is our values are aligned there.
Yeah, man. I in a talk, he was like, that's being completely asshole. And I'm like, okay, he's a VP. He's a VP. I'm like, damn, that's cool. Crazy, man. I love that freedom and I love that authenticity. So thank you so much, Ghostcrawler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity. This was really fun. I hope your viewers enjoy it.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, anytime. If you want to do it again, hit me up.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Thanks, Akash. Have a good day.
Yep. Bye.
So I always end my talks with this wonderful screenshot. Didn't realize Ghostcrawler was old. So thank you.